was a mongrel.
In just one night, he had shot and wounded 4 police in 3 separate gun battles.
He was just an evil person.
This is a man who initially shot 2 policemen to avoid apprehension for minor burglary, and that speaks volumes.
He's got no prior convictions, he's got no prior police history. It's quite a daunting prospect, thinking, well, you know, what sort of person are we dealing with here?
But police were beginning to build a profile of the man they were hunting.
Mad Max was born Pavel Marinof. He came to Australia in 1969 from Bulgaria. He immigrated to Australia. When he arrived here, apparently, he changed his name to Max Clark, as we know him.
According to police, this is not the first time the man has been on the run. He fled the army in his native Bulgaria nearly 20 years ago and hid out in Turkey for 2 years before migrating to Australia in 1969.
The gunman is alleged to have lived at this house in South Clayton. Police have found evidence in the garage that he tested firearms. Neighbours say they heard shots fired in the past but didn't worry about it.
In fact, when police raided Clark's home soon after the shootings, they found a frightening display of weaponry, including a submachine gun, multiple high-powered handguns, shotguns, and even homemade silencers. There were also 7,000 rounds of ammunition.
Look, you could teach a monkey how to use a handgun. They're not a particularly difficult weapon to use, but to use efficiently and effectively in a combat situation, it takes a hell of a lot of practice and skill to be able to do it.
I think Marinof demonstrated a total disregard for life. And he was a psychopathic criminal. He had a focus and a fixation of firearms.
He worked in the factory area of where the actual incident happened in June 1985 as a fitter and turner. And whilst he was there, he was actually making guns on a lathe in the factory that he was working at.
With the .45 that he shot Sergeant Stuke with, he'd actually drilled the projectiles out with a drill, which made them a more effective weapon against humans. You know, damage more flesh, damage more tissue, more likely to cause death and bleeding. You've got an armed offender who's prepared to fire bullets without even batting an eyelid, and we didn't know where he was.
Come home, Daddy. Come on, Daddy. We love you. We love you.
4-year-old Sandra said it all. She misses her father, she wants him home. So do the rest of the family, who'd rather see him in jail than on the run.
He was the average Mr. Smith that had a wife, 2 adopted children at that stage. He was, from all intents and purposes, a hard-working individual.
He's very quiet. He keeps to himself. He adored his family.
The way he was described to us by the people that knew him, as in friends and associates, was a good workmate, a very nice family man, normal in every aspect of his life.
He was obviously a very fit individual who used rope and climbed or gained access to the factories through skylights and lowered himself down by knotted rope, and it made his escape. Yet at the same time, this individual, when he did commit the burglaries, was more like a bowerbird. I mean, when his premises was searched, there was 20 and 30 little pocket calculators, incidental minor items that were stolen. It was only the petty cash which contained anything up between $20 and $50.
On day 5 of the search, police discovered an unoccupied local flat had been broken into. There was a chance Mad Max was hiding there.
The unit had been searched and found empty. However, police say they have strong cause to believe that the gunman was there at some stage and may have used the roof of the flat as a hideout.
This guy could live on the smell of an oily rag. He's holed up in a roof of a house with no food or water for 3 days, avoiding the police. Shows you the mindset of the bloke.
Police say they have strong evidence to suggest that the gunman is still in the area and may be receiving help. For that reason, they have no immediate plans of scaling down this search.
In the case of ordinary civilians that were non-criminals, I think it may have been a misguided sense of loyalty. You've got to understand this guy had a fairly good network of friends throughout, say, Romanian, Bulgarian, Serbian communities in that part of Melbourne. Some of these people clearly didn't know what he was capable of.
So now a police officer fluent in Yugoslav and Macedonian is handling the case. Detective Sergeant John Kaptanovsky believes members of Clark's family and others who've been questioned are withholding vital information. He's hoping the language barrier problem in the community is what's delaying progress in the case.
If they hold any fears or if they're frightened in relation to the language barrier, that I'm available to speak to them in the Macedonian dialect mainly. I can also understand Yugoslav.
But as the days ticked by with no new information, police had to face the fact the gunman had slipped through their net.
The final crunch came at the weekend when the information flow simply stopped.
It just dried up.
No calls at all?
From last Saturday, there hadn't been any calls received at all over the weekend.
He was a potential killer on the run, and no one was safe.
That type of criminal, that criminal with that twisted mind that's going to resort to firearms to shoot people, has got the upper hand because he knows he's the criminal. He can shoot people. They are literally going to be his target.
Brian Stuke was left a paraplegic the night a lone gunman dubbed Mad Max opened fire on police.
This is the scene where I was shot back in June 1985. I was shot approximately there and probably would have dropped to the road surface about there. It was then that I tried to get cover and run behind the police car. And I was hit again. As I lay in Centre Dandenong Road, he fired 2 more shots at me. Each shot, I was fearful that that was going to be it. It's getting a bit traumatic being back here, actually.
You've got to understand where this guy come from. He comes from an Eastern Bloc country. They've got what one could probably accurately describe as a healthy disrespect for the police. And here he is in Australia. He's just shot a number of police. For all he knew, he'd killed a number of police. He didn't know what was happening on in the news. So he was ready for anything.
At Noble Park, police have changed their tactics. The command centre has been dismantled, but the number of plainclothes police has increased.
An intense manhunt of the area had turned up nothing. So in the coming weeks and months, the investigation would move into a new phase.
Based on our information, we believe that the man's being harboured. And if that is so, then the proper way to go about it is by investigation rather than search.
So we're out there to try to catch this guy, so you had to have all your shit in one sock. This is pretty serious sort of stuff. We raided